Hello everyone, I'm Evan Kamikow and welcome to the Toss-Up. Now that 2020 is over, it's time for the rest of college sports to come back, and this is the place to be. Each week, join myself and an expert-line panel dissect the latest sports news from some of the nation's most elite college programs here in Bloomington to the biggest stadiums and stages around the world. Stick around because we have a great show coming up for you on the Toss-Up. This is my favorite time of year when it comes to sports. Every sport possible has something going on right now, but today we are talking about one sport and one sport only, basketball. March Madness is finally here. People have been waiting almost 2 years to fill out brackets after the 2020 tournament was canceled by a virus to not be named. While Indiana men's basketball team will not be participating in the NCAA tournament this season, we'll have more on that later in the show, the future of men's basketball, and talk about the men's basketball tournament, but that's coming up in a little bit. To start, we're going to talk about the hottest team in town, the number 12 ranked IU women's basketball team. The Hoosiers have won the last 9 out of 10 games to finish the regular season. When the NCAA tournament bracket came out, the Hoosiers were awarded a first 4 seed in the Mercado Quadrant, with a first-round matchup against VCU. Terry Moore and squad, led by junior guard Grace Berger and senior guard Allie Patberg, is looking to make a deep run in this year's tournament. Without further ado, March Madness is back, so it's time to toss up basketball and March. Joining me on the panel this week are IUSTV's very own basketball reporters, women's basketball reporters, Will Trubshaw and Andrew Fish. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to talk some hoops.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. The IU women's basketball team is a 4 seed, as we've already said. What does this mean for the program this year? Will, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I think it's an indication of how far this team has come under Terry Moore. You know, this is year number 7 for her, and it's been a slow progression from the time they had Tyra Bose and Amanda Cahill all the way up to now. I mean, but this is far and away the best team that Indiana has ever had on the hardwood for the women's side. And I mean, again, it's just a testament to what Terry Moore has built, and it's legit too. This is not some fluke. I think this is the beginning of what's going to be sustainable and consistent success for this women's team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. The trajectory of this team has been incredible. Every single season, Terry Moore is bringing a team that's getting better and better every game, every week, every month. We saw it towards the end of the season when they went a month and a half without losing a game this year. They had a disappointing performance in the Big Ten tournament, but they're definitely tooled and ready to go to make a run in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. And like you guys said, you know, their program, Terry Moore's been here for 7 years. This is something that's coming. This is something that we know is going to get here. It's just only a matter of time. So speaking of Terry Moore, how has she, you know, prepared this team for the NCAA tournament, Andrew?
Well, I think that they have to kind of figure out another way to score, because the reason why they got beat by this MSU team in the Big Ten tournament is because from the perimeter, they're very average to below average. So I expect Terry Moore has been doing a lot of drill work to get three-pointers in the basket for this team, because in the NCAA tournament, you can't shoot like the Indiana Hoosiers have shot of recent. So they're definitely going to need to keep other teams from their scoring down, and they're going to need to figure out a way to score more than they have been.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. The shooting from the outside, at least, has kind of been one of the few weaknesses of this Indiana team. You know, they're so dominant in the paint, especially with Mackenzie Holmes. But the other thing, too, that I think Terry Moore is going to focus on, and this is something that it's the backbone of this team. It's the defense. You know, I'm sure they're going to get ramped up, and it doesn't matter who they're going to be facing. They focus on defense first, and that will win you games in the tournament. You know, as big as it is to be able to knock down those shots on the outside. If you're a fundamentally sound team on the defensive end, it's going to carry you a long way. So I'm sure, without question, that's what Terry Moore is working on with the team down in San Antonio as we speak.
yeah, and it's such a big matchup. It's coming up. You know, let's preview that. You know, IU is going to take on VCU. They're a number 13 seed. What do the Hoosiers have to do to be successful? What can you tell me about this matchup?
Well, you know, the thing about this VCU team, it's pretty interesting. They've won 4 in a row, so they're getting hot at the right time. They were projected in the preseason to be the champions of the Atlantic 10 Conference. Kind of fizzled in the regular season, but then they get in the A10 tournament, rattle off 4 straight, including an upset over number 1 seed Dayton, ironically enough. And they get into the tournament with the automatic bid. So this is a team that they've got it going at the right time. So I think that said, Indiana can't take them lightly. You've got to be focused on the task. Treat it like you're preparing for Maryland, like you're playing for Maryland or UConn or North Carolina State. You got to treat these guys like they're the number 1 seed. You can't take any days off because they're coming in ready and they want to make something happen. This is their best seeding ever. VCU as well. So they're looking for an upset bid. If you take it lightly, it can happen.
Yeah, I think it's a good test to start the tournament as well. The reason MSU beat them, the 3-point shooting, VCU 10 of 20 from 3-point land in the A10 championship. So right off the bat, the perimeter defense has to be there if this Indiana team is going to advance.
And that perimeter defense, that's going to fall a lot on the guards. You're going to want to test them. You're going to want to make sure that they're going to be there. And I genuinely believe that this team will be ready for the VCU test. So let's look at the quadrant now instead of just the matchup. You have NC State, Arizona, Texas A&M, and Michigan State, who upset IU in the Big Ten tournament. How tough will the road for the Hoosiers be?
Well, it's not going to be easy by any stretch. I mean, I don't think anyone chalks it up to be easy. Every game is a battle, and when it's one and done, everyone's out there fighting for their lives. However, I put together a little mock bracket.
He's breaking out the bracket.
Here
we go.
I'm breaking out the
He's going to break out the bracket.
And maybe I got a little ahead of myself, but I do have Indiana making it to the Final Four. Now, to do that, they did get through NC State. I think realistically, that's probably the best they could do. Is they'd probably cap out an Elite Eight. I don't know how realistic it is that they get past a Texas A&M.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think IU is certainly a well-built enough team that they can make it that deep. They're number 9 in the net rankings. That's ahead of pretty much every team in this bracket except for NC State in their portion of the bracket. So I mean, they're just a well-built team, and the underlying numbers meet the eye test, and as they can make it pretty far in this tournament as long as they play their cards right.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think the quadrant definitely runs through NC State, and while I don't have the bracketology expert like Will Trubshaw, I do think that Wes Moore, the head coach of NC State, possibly the Naismith Coach of the Year. They're a team that beat South Carolina earlier in the year. They ran right through the ACC. They're a terrific team. So if Indiana is able to advance to eventually play them, I think it's going to be a terrific matchup. NC State, I think, has a chance to win it all. So that'll be an awesome test to see where this Indiana team is nationally.
Yeah, and there's so many good teams in this quadrant, and especially in the tournament. Indiana's only a 4 seed, and you think of when you think of a tournament, you think, a 4 seed, they can be the ones to make the run, but then you have those 1 seeds that are dominant, the 2 seeds, the 3 seeds. There's a lot to talk about. So, Andrew, I'll ask you this. For Indiana, who will be the difference maker for this club to get deep in the tournament?
Well, I think the clear answer is Allie Papper, because she hasn't played the best she's capable of playing throughout this season. But I think kind of a dark horse here is Nicole Cardano-Hillary, who has been a terrific addition, the transfer from George Mason, who really, she can knock down perimeter shots. She's probably the best individual defender on this team. So you put her, she's been in foul trouble the last few games. If she can stay out of foul trouble, she is such a big part of what Indiana's trying to do, where offensively and defensively, she's going to make a big difference.
Well,
I mean, I'd agree with that. We talked earlier just about how the guard play, especially against VCU, will be crucial, trying to limit the opportunities from outside, from 3 on the defensive end. So, I mean, I think you can look at Pat Berg, Nicole Cardano-Hillary, and even Grace Berger. But for me, I think the real key is Mackenzie Holmes. Obviously, first team All Big Ten this year. I mean, fantastic player. And IU has run into problems when, in a couple of facets, either when she's the only one who's scoring or if she's not scoring at all. So they need to find a way to make sure that they can get her open and operating in the post. Because when teams shut her down, and that's kind of what Michigan State was able to do a little bit, they messed around with IU's defense and started forcing them outside to take those 3-point shots. So if you can establish Mackenzie Holmes early in the post, it frees up the rest of the game. And once she gets going, she's liable to put up 24, 26 points a night. So get her going and you're in good shape.
So guys, to wrap up really quickly, I'm going to ask you guys this real quick. Who do you think is going to win the women's NCAA tournament? Will, we'll start with you.
Well, we'll go back to the sheet.
He's bringing out the bracket again.
Check the notes.
I don't really need to check that. I think it's going to be UConn this year. I mean, they're just a really, really solid team. Again, even the Coach Ariyama is going to miss the first couple weeks due to COVID. I mean, this team with Paige Buchers, they're tough to beat. They're really tough.
Yeah, for me, obviously, UConn is an easy choice. I'll take Stanford. Just their depth, 4 scorers in double figures, averaging double-figure points this season. I think they can beat you in so many different ways. They've been the #1 team in the nation for a while. They slide to the 2 slot entering the tournament, but they're terrific.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UConn. Gino Auriemma, he knows how to win. In a weird year like this, I feel like UConn is the safe bet to win. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Coming up after the break, Anthony McClain joins us in studio to update you on the future of IU men's basketball. Then, Jimmy Sutton and Grace Ybarra join the panel to talk all things men's March Madness. We'll be right back. On Monday, IU men's basketball head coach Archie Miller was relieved of his duties as head coach. Here with more on the future of IU men's basketball is our very own Anthony McClain. Anthony?
Thanks, Evan. This week, the Indiana Athletic Department and men's basketball head coach Archie Miller have parted ways after 4 seasons. During his time as head coach, Miller had an overall record of 67-58 and 0 NCAA tournament appearances at IU. Despite the lack of dominance in the Big Ten, Miller was able to recruit 3 Indiana Mr. Basketballs in a row. Before that, no coach in IU history has ever accomplished the same feat. However, that was the past, and Indiana basketball fans are now ready for the future. To be specific, the next head coach of Indiana University men's basketball team. To name a few head coaching candidates, the first name that has created much buzz is current Boston Celtics head coach Brad Stevens. Other names to look out for are Iona's Rick Pitino, former Michigan head coach John Beilein, and Texas Tech head coach Chris Beard. However, there is one coach who could be a perfect fit for the Hoosiers, Keith Smart. Smart is a former Hoosier basketball player for the 1987 National Championship team. Smart has ties with the golden days of Indiana basketball, which could win the fan base over, along with a professional resume with no scandals. He has head coaching experience in the NBA and has been praised as a great teacher. As one of our own IU alumni, Smart could be the guy to bring dominance back to this program, just like Juwan Howard has at Michigan. Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Now joining me on the show to preview the NCAA men's basketball tournament and talk some IU basketball is IUSTV men's beat reporter Jimmy Sutton and the IDS men's basketball beat reporter Grace Ybarra. Jimmy, Grace, thanks for being here today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so Jimmy, I'll start with you. IU fired Archie Miller. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, I think it shows that Scott Dolson realized that Archie Miller wasn't living up to the expectations that Indiana basketball is. I think they know that the culture here, it's a huge program, that's important here, and I think Scott Dolson finally realized that, and he knew it was time to get rid of Archie Miller, and he did just that.
Grace?
I think a really big thing that this means for the program moving forward and what his firing is opening that new chapter for IU men's basketball, and like you just said, tradition, history, and that was something that just wasn't clicking with Miller. And Dolson, in his first year as athletic director, made that call, found that money for that buyout, and found a way to open this new chapter for IU men's basketball. And one word that he really used when he was talking about Miller's firing in that press conference was consistency. And I think that's something that really stuck with me from that is that's not something they had these last 4 years under Archie, and that's something that they're seeking to find with this new identity is consistency. Yeah,
and consistency, there was consistency under Archie, but it was never improving consistency.
Yeah.
It was always kind of that same flat line. I never saw that IU was getting better year in year. Even the teams that the rosters you could say were better, they just weren't better. And that's just the thing. Jimmy and I, we talk about it on Hoosier Quick Hits all the time is, how do you get better with Archie here? And, luckily you said it, the guys who bought out Archie Miller's contract, we don't know who they are. We can take educated guesses, but we don't know who they are. So, I'm not saying thank you to them, but hopefully this is a new era of IU basketball. So in the new era of IU basketball, Grace, who do you want to see as the new head coach?
Well, that's who I want to see versus who I think I'm going to see. I think it's a completely different answer.
Who do you think we're going to see?
Who do I think we're going to see? Well, we were just talking about this before the show, and tossing around a few names with Beeline and Beard and all of that, but looking back on how the situation unfolded literally just 4 years ago is Crean was fired, and then 9 days later, they hired Archie Miller. So with the tournament happening, I could see them, looking to hire someone soon after their team is knocked out of the tournament. But it's a little bit tricky. And like with Beeline, we said there's nothing holding them back right now from hiring him. So I'm starting to see that maybe as less of a possibility. And I'm going to say it. Everyone keeps talking about Stevens and Brad Stevens.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room is Brad Stevens. And everyone in this fan base has expressed their desire for Brad Stevens. There are so many memes about it. And I don't know if you guys watched him talk about it in a press conference on the radio show. And he seems dismissive of the idea, but I don't know. There's still a little bit of room there. I'm not sure if it's an entire no. And also, I don't know if you guys saw, I think Butler Blue was just making the rounds today, but he was in front of Assembly Hall, and I mean, he could be visiting a friend. I don't know.
Jimmy, anyone that Grace never mentioned?
Like she said, I mean, I would love to say we're getting Brad Stevens, but let's be realistic. Also, another thing that I think we got to talk about is, yes, people have thrown out the names like Chris Beard or Scott Drew, or I've even heard people say Mark Few from Gonzaga. But like all those guys, realistically, I don't see why they would leave and come here. They're all in good places. They're making good money. Like, why come here and have to work on something that might be a little bit more work? So realistically, I kind of look at it as if Scott Dolson wants to keep the tradition and the culture here and the history, I can see him going after someone like Dane Fife, the assistant coach at Michigan State, who's been working under Izzo for a few years now. Another option, I've heard Calbert Cheney's name thrown out there. I've heard Keith Smart's name thrown out there. If they don't go that route, then I can see them going with Beeline. And I mean, Beeline will only have for 5 to 6 years because he is older. I think he's 68 years old. But let's say they bring on an old IU guy as an assistant, and then he can take over when Beeline's done. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, I really don't know if they're going to go like a mid-major route. Like I've heard Porter Mosier's name from Loyola Chicago. But, I mean, we saw how that went when we hired Archie from Dayton, and that didn't go too well. So I don't see them going that route. I can see them sticking with culture and sticking with a former IU basketball
And just to talk a little bit about, you said not sure if those guys want to come here. One thing that's kind of been racking my brain is they found this donor to buy out Archie Miller, and then they had this other donor to help with the transition costs and finding a new head coach. And at some point, I'm wondering, what is that number for these guys who maybe not want to go here? And is that budget for getting a new coach pretty high, and will that help in finding someone that might want to come here?
All right, so let's move away from IU basketball because it's been talked about so much. Let's get right into March Madness. Who do you guys think is going to be the Cinderella team this year? Jimmy, we'll start with you on this one.
All right, I'm going to go with Ohio. Number 13 seed to beat number 4 Virginia. I think Ohio, they've got this kid. His name is Jason Preston. He's a junior point guard. He actually came from, he was very underrated, didn't have many offers. And he's averaging just about 17 points per game, and he leads this team. They are very good. This is a team that only lost to Illinois by 2 at the beginning of the season. So I look at it that way. In Virginia, they're coming off COVID problems. Just last week, they were knocked out of the ACC tournament. So I look at it that way, that Virginia's kind of on the struggle bus right now, and Ohio's a sleeper team. I can see them coming in and taking them down.
Grace?
Yeah. So my answer is, it's not truly, I guess, who I think could be a Cinderella story, but my whole thing with Cinderella stories is you don't know what to expect, and that's the entire purpose of it being a Cinderella story, is you don't see it coming. And what I think that would just be so fun is Oral Roberts, and obviously that matchup is with number 2 Ohio State, and we've seen Ohio State play IU a few times, and didn't quite go well for them, but I think this is the 6th time they've ever made the tournament, haven't won since the 70s. It would be really cool to see them at least just win that round of 64 game.
15 to beat a 2. That'd be
Yes, I love that matchup.
There's only been a few up 15-2, so it's
15-2s
possible. It's been
are
done
fun.
before. I'm going to go with my sleeper team. I would probably say UC Santa Barbara. I feel like they've had a lot of hype coming into this week. A lot of people are talking about them, and they have a pretty favorable matchup against Creighton. It's a game that, it could go either way, because every game could go either way, but I feel like UC Santa Barbara could do it.
They'd play Ohio if they won.
Yeah, exactly. They would play Ohio.
What a great game.
So we talked about Cinderellas. Let's talk about the dominant teams. Which number 1 seed, Grace, do you think will go out first?
I think Michigan. And, with Isaiah Livers being out indefinitely with that injury, I think that really hurts them. And obviously, Juwan Howard's an amazing coach and won Big Ten Coach of the Year and all of that. But you can only do so much with the guys you have on the floor, and if you don't have your best player out there on the floor, it's hard, and I think the other one seeds are really incredible, and they have those guys healthy. That's just what's going to set them a little bit apart from Michigan.
Yeah, I definitely don't see it being Gonzaga. I don't see it being Illinois. I think Illinois has a pretty good path to make it to the Final Four.
Definitely.
I agree with you. It's got to be Michigan. I can see them losing in the Sweet 16 against number 4 seed Florida State, something like that. Livers being out. And then Florida State is a good team. Honestly, I think they should have been a higher seed than a 4 seed. But yeah, I can see them losing in the Sweet 16 to number 4 Florida State. And I mean, Baylor could be a close second. They could watch out for Purdue in the Sweet 16. They might lose to Purdue there too.
Right.
So,
But
yeah, I think Michigan.
We saw what happened to them in the Big Ten tournament.
That's true. That
You
is true.
stole exactly what I was going to say. My prediction would have been Baylor. Yes, I completely agree with you about Michigan, Grace. I think that they are the most likely one. But to have a little difference, I would go with Baylor. Purdue's a tough matchup, so I think when they face them, even this second game, they could be seeing either Wisconsin or North Carolina, which could also be really tough for them as they, those are two teams. That game's going to be insanely close. Whoever's going to win that is going to have a ton of momentum going into the next game. So I think definitely Baylor is the one seed that I have my biggest question mark on. So we talked about the number 1 seeds. Let's move into some lower seeds. Are there any seeds, Jimmy, we'll start with you on this, outside of the top 4 that could make it to the whole thing and win it?
Realistically, I was looking at it, and I went through and I kind of looked at them. If anyone's going to win, I think the 1 through 4 seeds are all the best. I think Oklahoma State's a really good 4. I think Florida State's a good 4. But someone who I think is probably seeded a little bit lower than they should be is Texas Tech, and they're a 6th seed. They're really good. They've got Mac McClung, who averages just about 16.5 points per game, I believe, and he's the leader of that team. And I mean, Chris Beard took him to the championship 2 years ago in 2019 before COVID, and I don't see why they couldn't do it again. And I mean, they've got big bodies on their front court, and they've got a good team, so I can really see them making a run and at least going to the Elite 8, Final 4, and maybe even winning it all.
I have to agree with that. I think every team seeded 1 through 4, all 16 of those teams are kind of too good to have anybody else go all the way. And I agree with that, Texas Tech. But, there's a lot of really good 4s in this tournament, like you mentioned. Also Purdue. I don't really see any way that there's anyone outside of those 16 teams that would be able to, win the national title.
Yeah. So you're just going to stick with no other team?
No other team.
Okay. It's funny because we talked about this earlier, is that everyone seems to have the same, matchups in the Final Four.
Definitely.
No one's really predicting any, sleeper teams that are 5 to 16. I think if you're really looking at it, Jimmy, Texas Tech could be the one. You could say Villanova solely because they have the experience in their head coach.
Agreed.
And those are 2 teams who are 5 and a 6 who could make a deep run. Also watch out for UConn. I think, they face Maryland in the first round. That's going to be really tough because you never know with Mark Turgeon and the Terrapins. They're always up and down, but I think those 3 teams would have the best to go further in the tournament. So let's talk Final Four. We've been alluding it to the whole time. Grace, what is your Final Four for 2021?
No, I'm not like Will. I don't have my bracket in my back pocket. So I have Baylor, Illinois, Gonzaga, and then, oh my goodness, why am I blanking? Baylor, Gonzaga, Illinois. Big Ten team.
Michigan, Texas.
No, it wasn't Michigan.
Florida State,
why am I
Florida
blanking
State.
on it? No, I can't remember. Now I'm blanking.
Well, you'll remember.
I should have had it in my back pocket.
You should have brought a bracket like Will.
I know. It'll probably come back to me in a second. But
all right, we'll get back to you.
We'll get back to that.
Jimmy, what's your Final Four?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to have Gonzaga taking on Florida State, the 1 seed versus the 4 seed.
Got you.
And on the other side, I think I'm going to have Baylor taking on Illinois, both the other 1 seeds. I really like Florida State this year. I think they're a very good team. I said it earlier. I think they will upset Michigan in the Sweet 16. They've got 5. They're one of the best offensive teams in the country and one of the best rebounding teams in the country, which obviously those are 2 key things you need to make a run in this tournament, right? They've got 5 guys that are averaging at least making 1 3-pointer a game. And they've got a guy who's averaging almost 2 offensive rebounds per game. And that's a game changer, especially when you can get second chance points like that. And I mean, Gonzaga, they're 26-0. They're going to be in the Final Four. They're probably making the championship game as well.
Yeah.
And then just Baylor and Illinois, they're both the 1 seeds. They're both good teams as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my Final Four is going to be Gonzaga. I don't think anyone really beats them. Iowa's going to give them a close test in the Elite 8. That could have been yours. My other 3 are going to be Illinois. I think they're the best team in that region. The Cade Cunningham potential matchup with IU. DeSamu is going to be a fantastic game.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be Michigan out of their section. I think it's going to be Texas instead. And then the last team I'm going to go with is Ohio State. So we're going to get a good Ohio State-Illinois rematch in the Final Four.
Big Ten.
Be interesting.
Big Ten. So we talked Final Four. Grace, Iowa was your last team? That seemed like the reaction we got.
I don't remember. Honestly, it's been a while since I've done it. And, I feel like my Final Four is always changing in my head a little bit.
Right.
And with however many brackets you made, everyone has
Right.
different Final Fours.
Right. So, but I think what comes down to is the most important is Gonzaga and Illinois, which I had in the title game.
So that's
And
your championship game,
Yes, it
Gonzaga,
is.
Illinois. Jimmy, what is your championship
You know I
game?
hate doing this. Mine's Gonzaga and Illinois as well. And I feel like everyone
We
else in the
talked about
world
this
has
before.
Gonzaga and Illinois. It's
Yeah.
very frustrating, but realistically, I think those are the two best teams. I think it's not even. Well, it is close. I'll say Baylor's pretty close, but I think Illinois has a pretty easy path, and I just think Gonzaga's really good. So
And
I don't see anyone else getting to the championship game. but
everyone
those two.
else has it,
Yep.
Everybody's thinking the same
Yep.
things.
I'm going to go with my championship game because you guys both said Gonzaga, Illinois. That's who I think is going to be in it. But
Yeah.
just for a little bit of differentiation, I'm going to go with Alabama.
Okay.
Ooh.
And I'm going to go with Illinois. I think Alabama could pull off the upset against Gonzaga if I had to pick any of the 32 teams on that side of the bracket to do it. I feel like Alabama will have the best chance to do it. And
Totally agree.
Illinois, obviously, I think that they're one of the best teams in the country.
Iowa's just
Kofi
amazing,
Coburn,
so-
Io. You have other guys. I'm completely blanking on some of their other guys. Andre Cabrillo. They have
It's
shooters.
mainly Coburn
they have big
and
men.
Io.
It is
Yeah.
Coburn and Io.
It's the
so,
that duo.
Basically.
so who will be crowned champions of the 2021 season? Grace, we'll start with you.
Illinois. I watched them play IU this season, obviously, and especially in person. I was sitting, I think, like second row of the media row, and just like Kofi is so huge. I don't like him and Io playing together was insane to watch in person, and just the way that they were completely able to put on a clinic over IU is insane. But and honestly, I don't remember how they hung in there, at least in the first game a little bit, but. You know, those two of the best guys in the country, I don't see any way that they don't win.
Okay. I think Gonzaga's going to win.
Oh, I like that we're splitting it up here.
The Hoosier fan in me will not let me pick Gonzaga because I don't want IU to lose their 1976 undefeated record. I don't want Gonzaga to get that. So I'm going to take Illinois in my bracket, but if I'm being realistic, I do think Gonzaga is the best team and they will most likely win it all.
Yeah, I'm going to go Illinois as well. As much as I want to say Gonzaga or Alabama.
Alabama would be so fun.
Alabama would be so much fun, but I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at matchup-wise, it's Illinois.
Yeah.
No one really compares to them size-wise, speed-wise, shooting-wise. And, you know, who doesn't love Ayu Dosamu in a Batman mask?
Yeah.
I think that just makes the
Yeah, oh, yeah.
complete,
I think,
I think that makes it so much better.
They should win
Seeing
based
them
off of
live
that.
in person was just something else. I went to the Illinois-Rutgers game, and even though it was Rutgers, they still put up a fight, and Illinois just looked completely dominant.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Illinois on this
Yeah.
one. So, guys, thank you so much for joining the show. That's going to do it for March Madness. But before we do leave, what are you excited about coming up in the next 2 weeks? Last thing.
I think what I'm most excited about is just to have this back and have the constant basketball on all of the time. Obviously, it's been 2 years since we had that, and I remember going home just about a year ago and everything being canceled and I having nothing to do, and I was just so sad because at that time I would typically be watching all of these games, and it was so hard to go through the month of March without that. And I think I'm just excited to have that atmosphere, and also with the entire thing being here in Indiana. I grew up in Indianapolis. It's literally a dream come true, and I think it's so cool the way that all the excitement just radiates through the state and through Bloomington, through West Lafayette, through Indianapolis, and it's just cool to have it all in your backyard.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Man, I'm happy. Like she said, like it's been 2 years. I can't even. March Madness is my favorite sporting event of all time. Like I love filling out the brackets. I love sitting my butt down on the couch and not moving for a whole weekend. That sounds amazing to me. So I'm really looking forward to it, especially this coming weekend. This is the best part when it's just game after game after game,
Yep.
and it doesn't get better than that. And then obviously, if a Cinderella team makes a run, they're always fun to watch and root
Absolutely.
for. So.
Loyola
Yeah, I'm just
Chicago
happy.
did it. Loyola Chicago did it 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
March is back. I love
Sister
March
Jean's
Madness.
back,
Sister
too.
Jean is back
Yep.
too.
She's
That
in
is
Indy.
definitely- She's in Indy. She is here. She's going to watch the games. Thank you guys so much for joining me. That does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Instagram page at IUSTV Sports and on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports. We are always looking for ways to improve the show, so feel free to ask any questions you might have or suggestions for future episodes. Everyone stay safe. Thank you for watching at home. And as always, toss it up. By night, we'll catch it, and we'll see you next week.